Freedom's greetings, Helldivers. Ervin here to bring you a breakdown and analysis of every enemy weak point in Helldivers 2. The enemies have continued to escalate, and therefore, so has our understanding of the inner workings of the enemy, in addition to our third party resources for determining their weaknesses. With these new tools and innovations we've been given access to thanks to the community, I've laid out the best points on every enemy to aim for, what weapons are the most effective against them, and what sub weak points are best in the event that the main one is not available. We've got a lot to talk about here, so let's start with a rundown on every automaton weak point, shall we? We're going to be starting off with the Factory Strider, as it's by far the most complex enemy in the entire game, sporting more parts and separate health pools than any other. This enemy essentially has two layers to every single part of its body, one plate of armor covering up other more vital parts underneath, with a massive 10,000 HP main health pool that you'll basically never crack. Due to that very sizable main health pool, it is very impractical to take it down outside of body parts it cannot live without, listed as fatal components. Although the body is covered in a thick layer of armor, there are gaps in that armor we can and do exploit. The eye of the Factory Strider correlates directly to the head health pool of 2500 with 100% durability and class 4 armor. This bypasses the need to damage the head armor that otherwise covers the area, sporting class 5 armor and 1500 additional health. The next best weak point on this enemy, should the eye not be available as a target, is going to actually be the feet and the frontal area of the leg joints. Each of these legs have their own individual health pools and are exposed at some or all angles, unguarded by the outer armor. The legs have only 3,000 health, class 4 armor, and 100% durability, making them your next best target for bringing down a Factory Strider quickly. Lastly, and likely the least available option, as it requires being very close to the Factory Strider, the doors underneath the enemy are both separate health pools covered in an outer plate of armor wrapped around the rest of the body. Firing into either of these doors meets a fatal 2400 health pool with 100% durability and only class 3 armor. While this is the weakest of the three targets we've discussed, it's also the least accessible due to the very compromising position you have to be in to make use of it. A good one to keep in mind if you find yourself in the right circumstances, but not your first choice. As far as what weapons handle this threat, anything class 3 or greater in the primary department can clip those chinling guns off to help reduce the threat of this enemy. When it comes to exploiting the weaknesses we pointed out, though, class 4 penetrating support weapons take too many shots to be viable against legs or the eye on average, including the railgun despite it being class 5, as it simply takes too many rounds from any of them to be worthwhile. Now, the anti tank class of weaponry handles this threat through any of the available weak points, depending on where it currently sits on the damage pyramid in 1 to 3 shots, no matter which one you choose, making them the most ideal for handling this target. But if you're pushed into the position to do so, it is worth mentioning that class 4 penetrating weapons do have some play against those door weak points due to them actually getting to do full damage into that high durable part. Going through the tanks next, these saw a very drastic change with the end of the 60-day plan patch. While the Annihilator and Shredder tanks both had Class 6 armor all over the front plates, this has been removed entirely, reverting them to Class 5 armor along this entire region, allowing the recoilless rifle and spear to take them out through the front with just one shot, even if you don't hit the barrel of the gun. In the event you are lacking an ideal anti tank answer in the form of support or stratagems, and instead have a railgun or penetration 4 weapon to work with, you're going to want to instead flank around to the back of all of the different tanks to fire at the new weak point on the back of them. This weak point is now separated from the turret itself and now has the same amount of health the tank's gun had previously, making it a reasonable kill point even for class 3 penetrating weapons or explosive primary weapons. This is an especially good weak point for the autocannon, AMR, railgun, and the grenade launcher from many additional angles besides the flank, thanks to this weak point only having class 3 armor. While you can knock the tracks off tanks as well, this is widely not worth the effort, even if it is only going to require class 3 penetration to do so, as for whatever reason, they are also immune to explosions, so be sure to either have anti-tank to fire into the front of the tanks, or flank the weak point on the back of the tank. Moving on to the next most annoying enemy in the Automaton faction, we have the Rocket Strider. It shares its anatomy with the lower difficulty Scout Strider for the most part, other than there being no driver to exploit as a weakness. The crotch area between the legs is the most vulnerable portion of this enemy, with only 300 HP, no durability, and Class 3 armor weapons like the Jar 5, crossbow, and Diligence counter sniper, making short work of them through this spot. The railgun and anti-material rifle also are able to one-shot this enemy, making them particularly strong against it. The autocannon is actually not great at all against it. This is due to the fact that this crotch region is magically immune to explosions, so a large portion of its damage is being completely negated. Beyond that, if you don't have a medium penetrating weapon to deal with them, which you absolutely should by the way, shooting the rockets on the side of the Strider will cause them to detonate unreliably, dealing sometimes enough damage to bring them down, but other times not. Moving on to the Berserkers next, this enemy was actually just given a real weak point right in the glowing stomach region. This is now the second best spot to hit, as it only has 350 HP compared to the pelvis sporting 600 and the torso sporting 425. It is, however, important you pick a part of the body and focus it, as all of these health pools are entirely separate, so you can still give yourself the impression they are tankier than they are in actuality if your aim is off. When they are stationary, a headshot is most desirable of all, with them only having 125 health in the dome. However, once they get on the move, all their bobbing around makes this very difficult. In that situation, it's typically going to be best to go for that less erratically moving stomach region for consistency's sake. Every weapon in the game is effective against them due to the Berserkers lacking any armor of note. But weapons that stagger or have high overall raw DPS are going to handle packs of Berserkers best, such as the Punisher Plasma, Crossbow, or Tenderizer as some examples. Right, it's time to talk about the Devastator, an enemy with a large amount of individual health pools, so where your shots land is crucial to bringing them down swiftly, especially in light of the danger they pose. The anatomy of every Devastator variant is exactly the same outside of the backpack on the Heavy Devastator that does function as an additional fatal weak point, sporting a notably hefty 600 health with light armor, although no durability. If the Heavy Devastator has its side or back to you, this is a decent spot to aim when you lack other options. Beyond that, we have a similar stomach region to the Berserker with only 350 health, basically no armor at all, and no durability, making this spot extremely vulnerable to every weapon in the game, although heavy devastators tend to protect this region with their shield when facing you, making it a more exploitable weakness for rocket devastators and normal devastators. When you've got your hands on a medium penetration weapon, however, it is also reasonable to bring them down directly through medium armor breastplates above the stomach still, as it only has 425 health and 30% durability. Essentially, any medium penetrating primary can do this in a reasonable number of shots besides the Liberator penetrator. Of course, compared to all of this, a headshot is still preferable. Weapons that handle Devastators particularly well are going to be the Railgun for its reliable, low charge, one shot body shot capability, as well as any weapon capable of heavy stagger, is also going to be strongly recommended for dealing with Devastators, such as the Jar 5, Crossbow, Diligence Counter Sniper, Punisher Plasma, and so on. As long as you are focusing your fire on one specific part, and have enough penetration value, you should be striking down Devastators reasonably well with just about any weapon, however. Now we've got the gunships. The Hull is the toughest of your three options, sporting class 4 armor and 700 health as well as 100% durability. The only weapon that should be aiming center mass for these are of the anti-tank variety. The front thrusters only have 400 health, level 3 armor, and 85% durability, making them a much more ideal target for your penetration for support weapons, as well as the railgun for that matter. The back thrusters are slightly more vulnerable with only 80% durability, but there is very rarely a difference in performance one way or the other. The back thruster is likely worth keeping in mind should you be desperate enough to be attempting to take them down with class 3 penetrating primaries like the counter sniper or crossbow, however. The autocannon is among your best options as a dedicated anti-air answer, thanks to its ability to knock out up to 5 gunships within one reload should your aim be on point. Next up, we have the dropships. They range from a pointless waste of ammo to a fantastic act of preventative measures when taking them down. The whole thing is covered in class 5 armor. The main body can be cracked in two with just one spear or recoilless rifle rocket, while a thruster can be knocked out by the Quasar or Eat in just one round. The tricky part here is the enemies on board must not have been disengaged whatsoever. As soon as they decouple from the ship, there is no longer any guarantee that they're going to take any real damage beyond what they receive just due to the ship potentially impacting them as they land. But if you do manage to break the dropship before any enemy decouples, even if it's a factory strider, this results in an instant kill for every enemy on board the dropship, promoting a very powerful strategy when playing rocket defense missions utilizing the recoilless launcher and team reloading. Utilizing this can completely shut down the enemy offensive. And in other missions, you can still potentially save your team dealing with any particularly nasty bot drops out in the field as long as you get on target quick enough. Now, it should come as no surprise that the troopers are taken out by every single weapon in the game through a headshot, including melee, due to them only having 40 health and no durability, making it the overall biggest weak point they have. But essentially, any weapon able to deal more than 100 damage is going to be able to one shot troopers through the body or either leg. The arms are not fatal to remove, so if at all possible, avoid hitting those over the torso, legs, or head with generally every weapon. Keep in mind, some are wearing light armor breastplates, however, so you'll need to take this into account if taking them down through the center mass. Chaff slaying weapons with a high rate of fire or large area of effect handle waves of troopers best, but as these are often such a minor threat besides the MG Raider who can delete you in 2 hits, it's not worth tailoring your loadout around them or anything. All right, we're now getting into the Terminids, so let's just get this little critter out of the way first, the Scavenger. Every single weapon one-shots them hitting anywhere. The only thing of note here is the peak physique armor actually brings your melee damage up high enough to one-shot them with a body shot, no longer needing a headshot to insta-kill with melee. Yeah, I can't wait for bayonets to make this portion of the passive actually mean something. Hunters have been knocked down to 160 health on their bodies, making them particularly susceptible to fire, given that the burning effect lasting even a microsecond longer due to being applied by the ground or applied with even just one pellet from either shotgun will cause hunters to die 100% of the time straight up. Beyond this, there are no particularly interesting weaknesses for the Hunter, besides the fact the head is one shot for every weapon in the game. Similar to Troopers, weapons with a high rate of fire, area of effect, or both are most effective for handling Hunter packs. Warriors are very similar to hunters in just about every respect when it comes to what deals with them best. However, the head is a much larger target and significantly weaker than the 325 health body, only having 150 health before it begins a terminal bleed out. Keep in mind, however, if your loadout lacks stagger, popping the heads off of warriors, especially the red ones, although they begin to bleed out the remaining 175 health rapidly, do enter in a very fast death charge. So popping heads off over body shots is not always going to be desirable depending on your kit. Otherwise, avoid hitting the limbs, bring a strong chaff clearing primary like the Arc Blitzer, Incend Breaker, Crossbow, or Cookout, and you'll do just fine. If you want to get extra about it, the grenade launcher is also a good choice. The Hive Guards are a bit tricky. Their faces have medium armor, making a great argument for medium penetrating primaries like the Blitzer and Crossbow. But a little known fact about the Hive Guards, their little faces at the bottom of the front plate are not armored, but attached to the same health pool as the head hitbox. So any weapon you can get on this tiny target makes short work of them. Even at 250 health, it can be difficult to take these targets out in a reasonable time frame, though. Notably, the AMR and Railgun effortlessly one-shot these little guys, and all flamethrowers cause them to nestle down in a blocking stance while they burn to death, making these ideal choices for combating high volumes of Hive Guards. Alpha Commanders are the tankiest of the medium bugs in general when it comes to Helldivers 2. Their heads have 250 health before beginning a bleed out death charge, which isn't a lot on its own, but when you consider this hitbox is immune to explosions, has light armor, and is 70% durable, you can probably see why these guys used to be able to tank a commando rocket to the mouth before the update. Medium penetrating primaries or hybrid clearing support weapons work best against these guys. The Blitzer and Crossbow are typically the top running choices for dealing with these, as they have the most utility against the rest of the faction in addition. When it comes to strong support weapon options, the AMR and Railgun both have effortless one shot capability against the commanders, making them the top choices for handling these enemies specifically. The Stalker, an enemy recently updated to do its very best Predator impersonation, if predators could be heard breathing from 30 meters away, has some of the most forgiving mechanics when it comes to weak points in Helldivers 2. While the main health pool is a hefty 800 and it's lightly armored with 50% durability, all of the Stalker's limbs besides the wings are all interconnected to this one health pool, and all transmit the same amount of damage to the shared health pool, meaning there is only one wrong place to aim when it comes to this enemy. As far as what the sweet spot is, however, despite how sturdy their bodies are, the Stalker's head is actually an extremely flimsy 175 health with no armor or durability health pool. It's also worth noting that Stalkers struck below 30% main health will attempt to leap away and recloak, healing that main health by 150 per second until they once again decloak. This cloaking ability also has no internal cooldown, which is why you sometimes see them get locked into hopping over and over while recloaking as their health continuously ticks below 30%, then back up again. Although it's a very small target, weapons like the Arc Blitzer that automatically attempt to track towards the head hitbox can make short work of Stalkers, further assisted by the fact that staggering and stunning nature of this weapon keep them from making any meaningful progress towards you when the arcs don't make it to the head hitbox, no matter how many may be pursuing you. This logic applies to every bug oriented primary with stagger or crowd control, as getting into a DPS race with one or two stalkers may work out alright, but doing so with more than that is certain death, causing the metagame to shift towards weapons that at least in part have some crowd control capability. Next, we're going to attempt to cover both the nursing and biospewer in one go, as these enemies both have the same weaknesses, just with one level of armor difference between them in those places. In the case of both enemies, their weakest point is the mouth underneath the head. This area serves as a separate hitbox with no armor at all that, should it sustain 300 damage in the case of the biospewer, will cause it to instantly die. This is a difficult spot to aim for outside of when they rear up and spit, however. Your next best bet is going to be the head itself, which is much more visible during day to day activities. As it also only has 300 health in the pool before a fatal injury is struck, this area does have class 3 armor to contend with, making it unapproachable for any weapon sporting less than medium pen. But in the event the spewer is not facing you for a headshot, the butt and butt plate regions are both going to also be terrible targets for any non explosive weaponry due to them having very high durability that explosions ignore. Weapons like the crossbow, autocannon, and grenade launcher are going to be really good candidates for landing killing blows through these various body parts, but most other weapons should seek the head or mouth instead. The Constellation for the ICBM launch on Terminids also has spewers in it 100% of the time. So make sure to pack a weapon ideal for this enemy when gearing up to launch that democracy candle. I'll be doing a full video on constellations later down the line, as I imagine knowing what enemies you can expect in any given mission is likely useful information that you'd enjoy having should you have made it this far into a video on a topic like this. Cause yeah, as it turns out, no, it's not random at all. Next, we're going to be tackling the basic charger first. Anti-tank weapons can generally blow them away in one headshot besides the commando due to it only having 1200 health, class 4 armor, and 75% durability. That high durability, however, causes AP4 support weapons and the railgun some grief when it comes to breakpoints. The flamethrower, notably in all forms, does not care about durability, as all flame weapons have 100% durable damage. That's why now that you have to crack the armor with the flamers before you can roast the interior of the legs, you are actually going to be getting a quicker TTK across the board with these weapons by frying the head now over the legs by roughly 33% on average. In all cases, besides cracking a leg to finish with a primary, you are going to want to be landing headshots over leg shots. This is especially true due to the fact that the interior of the leg still has a very high amount of durability at 70%, even after being cracked open. making small arms very ineffective compared to last patch. Now, the rear, on the other hand, is very weak to explosive weaponry in particular, as it has no armor at all, but is still 80% durable with 950 health. Even the commando is capable of knocking a charger out through the butt in just one rocket, as once this body part is destroyed, it initiates a terminal bleed out in which the charger, well, can no longer charge. The best weapons generally for taking out chargers are going to be the anti tank launchers, of course, on the second tier of the pyramid or higher, like the Quasar, EATs, and Recoilless, as well as honorable mentions to the railgun, flamethrowers, and interestingly, the grenade launcher. Although this weapon is pretty worthless without a supply pack, the grenade launcher sees some play here due to the fact that the belly of the charger, linking to the 2400 main health pool, actually has only class 2 armor, and the 100% durability it has is functionally ignored by explosions. This means the grenade launcher can, in theory, dispatch chargers through the belly by firing below it in just 6 rounds, although this typically takes a few more in practice. It also exterminates them through the butt weak point for the same reason. Just be careful with the minimum arming distance and try not to hit the armor on the charger itself, as that will cause it to ricochet, potentially offing you. Now, behemoths and spore chargers are mostly the same, with generally higher health pools across the board or more durability, or both. But I do want to make note that the head and leg health pools of the behemoths are noticeably closer than when inspecting the other charger variants, making it more of a toss up between frying legs off or aiming for the head when it comes to non AT weaponry. The head is still going to be a quicker TTK on average, but they are much closer together. Next up, the Bile Titan has seen quite a lot of changes lately, and the devs pointed out how the inner belly would now be susceptible to small arms fire while also being a separate health pool. So let's investigate that claim first. The problem with the inner belly is while it might no longer be class 4 armor, it's interesting that this would be weak point still has a larger health pool than the Titan pre health buff had in general within the main health pool at a whopping 4,000 health. With 80% durability on top, it's pretty unrealistic for most any weapon to actually bring Bile Titans down through just the belly with any weapon in general, although it is possible when you have no other options. Thankfully, we do bring other options, though, don't we? The head is the go to weak point, having only 1500 health, class 4 armor, and 95% durability. We can instantly bring down Titans using any anti tank launcher besides the commando in just one hit, making it the ideal target should you have no other anti tank capability. Interestingly, the face is also by far the better target compared to the belly, should you be able to reach it with your flamethrowers, as again, those weapons deal the same durable damage as raw damage. Overall, anti tank weaponry, the railgun, and flamethrowers make the shortest work of Bile Titans and should be considered in any loadout. If you don't include one of these, make sure your team has it covered, or otherwise bring some anti tank stratagems like the 500 kg bomb or the orbital laser, which, little known fact, had its damage doubled last patch and can now fry through a Bile Titan plus 2 chargers and have a bit of juice on the extra. Alright, so for Impalers, they have a very finicky head hitbox that is only this red region around the face here. Any lower than that, and you're hitting the main health pool, hitting this part of the face with an anti tank launcher, and it's good night for the big fella in just one hit. Other weapons that make short work of impalers through this region of the face include the autocannon, the grenade launcher, and the explosive crossbow, due to it having next to no armor, but having 75% durability on the face that explosives ignore. Now, if you're behind the target, though, your next best option is going to be stripping the leg armor off with anti tank weaponry, then using an explosive or high durable weapon to finish it off through either back leg. Impalers on their own are pretty immobile, so just throwing a stratagem in their general direction is typically a great fire and forget answer as well. Okay, bit of a long video, but that was in fact a breakdown on every single enemy in Helldivers 2, their weaknesses, as well as some examples of what kind of weapons work best against each individual opponent. Hope you found this informational video helpful, and if you did, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment about anything I may have missed down below, as it really helps my channel out when you do. The informational images from this video also come from a Google Doc posted to Reddit by Keen Negotiations 9726. It's an extremely helpful resource for determining TTK, breakpoints, and enemy weaknesses at large. So if you want even more of this content, be sure to make your own copy of the Divers Decks doc, and you'll be free to experiment from there to your heart's content. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching till the end, everybody, and have yourselves a wonderful day. I'll see you next time.
You, Irvin.
You put it up too high. You put it on the cliff above me.
No!
Come on, no! Yes! To the skies! Ah!